The topic, it was game changers in pediatric surgical oncology. I mean, I think I really find it difficult to change the surgeons, but I think the pediatric surgeons are the better ones. I generally deal with the orthopedic surgeon. I hope there are no orthopedic surgeons here. Mine ones are absolutely malignant. But anyway, I'll see what I'm going to do is the next 15 minutes, I'll try to just bring up certain examples just to highlight how things have changed in pediatric radiation oncology and how they have impacted the outcome and the management policies in pediatric solid tumors. So these are the various pediatric solid tumors that we treat, and that's where we use radiation therapy. I've put nasopharynx at the top because that's one example where you use radiation therapy as the main modality of treatment. I'm going to use that model to show how changes in radiation therapy techniques and technology has improved outcomes in terms of toxicity and disease control. And similarly, I'll just bring in Ewing sarcoma and rhabdomyosarcoma and technologies like brachytherapy and so on. So what has really changed in radiation oncology? Yes, we know, but we have a better understanding of the natural history. So we know what to treat and what not to treat. We have better imaging now, so that helps us in delineating and identifying what we want to treat. We have optimized our treatment, when to come in really, in combination with surgery and chemotherapy. We have a better understanding about what damage that we do, and Dr. Kurkuria has always been there to point out that you're doing it wrong, and that's why all that side effects happening. And so we have to be careful. So we've learned from that. And of course, we have our newer technologies that we have in our armamentarium to help us in, and of course, the techniques that we have modified. So is the pointer moving? No. So these are the various basic things that we use. For teletherapy, we use a cobalt machine or a linear accelerator, which is much more fancy. And you have things like multi-leaf collimator. We have a simulator. We do not stimulate, but we simulate. And we need to simulate because unlike the surgeons, if Sajid makes a mistake and leaves a mop inside the abdomen, he can say, okay, fine, I go back and take it out. But if I shoot some radiation, then I cannot go and say that I will take it out. So I have to be pretty sure that what I am doing is what I actually want to do. This is brachytherapy, where we insert radioactive sources within the tumor. And the basic advantage of brachytherapy is that the dose in that area is very high and the surrounding area gets very little dose. So like in children, it is very important that you spare the surrounding normal tissues. So whatever technique you use, the main aim is to give maximum dose to the tumor, which is the red one in the center, and give as little dose to the surrounding normal tissues so that you have your optimal disease control and minimal side effects of treatment, with resulting in a good therapeutic ratio. So I'm just using nasopharynx as an example because this is a tumor which is surrounded by multiple critical structures all around. Like you can see here, the nasopharynx is surrounded by the optic nerve, optic chiasm, pituitary, brainstem, parotid, and you need to treat the center. And if you treat them badly, then again, the late effects clinic will come back and tell you that, okay, see, you created xerostomia, you've got a mandibular necrosis, you've got a dental caries, and the dose of radiation that is required for these tumors is pretty high. And it is high in the range of 70 gray to 60 to 70 gray, which is quite high, and which comes close to the tolerance of various organs that I mentioned. So previously, we used to use a portal like this. We used to treat from this side and treat through and through, and you would end up treating not only the tumor, but you would also end up treating the mandible, you would end up treating the thyroid, you would end up treating the parotid gland, you would end up treating a part of the brain behind, and the pituitary gland, and you know what the side effects can be. And that's where intensity modulated radiation therapy and these fancy techniques come in. So what does it really do? I don't want to go into the technicalities, but what it ends up doing is that it gives you a very conformal high dose region with which you can treat the tumor and spare the surrounding normal structures. Then you will ask me, you're showing me good pictures, but what is the evidence to say that it actually helps? Yes, this is a phase 3 randomized trial. This is not in kids, this is in adults. And if you can see, it's a large series where they're randomized to conventional radiation therapy versus IMRT, and the local controls remain the same, the regional control remained the same, the survivals remained the same, but what changed was the toxicities. The brain necrosis reduced, neuropathies reduced, CNS damage reduced, soft tissue and bone necrosis reduced, hearing loss reduced. And that is again very important in children. Now, do we have data in children? I was fortunate to have a group who believed in me, and then they allowed me to do this study and look at whether it makes a difference between 3D conformal or IMRT. And if you can see, the local controls are better in the ones where we did IMRT. And that is probably because we were able to treat the tumor area or cover the tumor area better while sparing the surrounding normal structures. Did it make a difference in toxicity? If you look at the grade 3 toxicity, there was a big difference. It was 5% in the IMRT arm and 47% in the 3D conformal arm. So if you're using conformal treatment or IMRT in nasopharynx, you would reduce grade 3 toxicity. And the time to development of toxicity also increased when you use IMRT. So in a way we said, and this is the first paper which actually said that there is benefit of using IMRT over 3D conformal. Does it hold true? Is it only our feeling, or do other people also say that? And this is a big paper from China. This is not a randomized study, but they also found that if you're using IMRT, the controls are same, but possibly the toxicity, some improvement. We shared our data with the Rare Cancer Network, and we found that you need to give high doses of radiation, 66 gray. So you need to give high dose of radiation, at the same time you need to spare the surrounding structures. But is that the real data? Is that the ultimate? The Germans do something different. The Germans came up with this data where they reduced the dose of radiation. But there was something different here. They had extremely good control rates, but what they used was chemotherapy plus interferon for 6 months. I don't know whether we will be able to use maintenance interferon for 6 months or not. And of course, everybody talks about proton beam therapy. Why not proton? We had some discussion on proton in the morning. So what is the big deal about protons? Proton is heavy, and that's why when you push them, it is difficult to push. That's why the machine is very expensive, and you need a cyclotron. But once you've pushed them, and it goes through tissue, and then it dips very rapidly. And because of this rapid dip that you see, you can spare the surrounding structures. And you can see the difference what happens when you treat orbit with X-rays versus if you treat with protons. You'll be obviously sparing better with protons. And this is one example of nasopharynx we treated with intensity modulated proton therapy versus intensity modulated X-ray therapy. You can see what is the additional dose of radiation that goes to surrounding normal structures. So there is a clear benefit of using, and that was seen in the form of reduced use of gastrostomy tube in the intensity modulated proton therapy arm versus the intensity modulated X-ray therapy. 65% versus 20%, that was statistically significant. But does proton therapy actually reduce the dose to critical structures? So if you look at this study from Mass General Hospital, they looked at standard X-ray therapy versus proton therapy, and they found that the difference or the benefit was huge. In pituitary sparing, it was almost 20% different. Temporal lobe necrosis dose was almost 14 to 15% different. So you were able to reduce the dose significantly. But why all that? Does it really help you? This kid we had treated with bilateral portals shielding the mouth, and this is 10 years later. There are various things that happened. If you see his neck is slightly narrow and slender, that's because of the hypoplasia that's happening with radiation therapy. We've also fired the thyroid gland, we've fired the parotid gland. But all these things, almost everything is improved with these conformal therapies. So if one says that do you need hi-fi treatment, IMRT and conformal in pediatrics, definitely yes, there is no doubt about it. Let's see Ewing sarcomas. Now standard treatment for Ewing sarcomas is obviously a combination of chemo, surgery and radiation, and wherever possible we do organ and function preserving surgery. But look at the data. From all these studies, the IESS to the more recent children's oncology group studies, almost about 40% of the patients can undergo surgery. 30% would require surgery plus post-op RT, and another 30% would be treated with radiation therapy alone. So almost 60% of the patients would receive radiation therapy. But most surgeons will show this slide, which says that the outcome with radiation therapy is inferior. So obviously it will be inferior. That's because you've chosen the patients that way. You have large tumors, non-resectable tumors treated with radiation, and the smaller ones being treated with surgery. But as long as it is beneficial for the patients, it is good. If you look at the CESS data, the local recurrence rates, again, we'll say if you do definitive RT, 25% local recurrence. But these are the ones who had bad disease, large tumors. And if you see surgery alone, these were the small resectable, distal phalanx and things like that, where you had better controls. But again, you can see that the radiation oncologist always helps the surgeon when they are in trouble. So this, when they sometimes create positive margins, does radiation therapy actually help? Now, if you look at the last box there, the event-free survival with adequate margin 70%, inadequate margin 50%. But in patients with inadequate margins, if you add radiation therapy versus no radiation therapy, if you add radiation therapy, the outcomes improve. They almost come close to the adequate surgical margin. So so if you have close margins, you do benefit with radiation. What if you have bad chemotherapy, or sometimes chemotherapy works, but many times when it doesn't work. So if you have poor necrosis, you have benefit of adding radiation therapy in Ewing sarcoma. The children's oncology group they're a bit reluctant in using radiation therapy for their children. But if you still see almost all the pelvic tumors, almost all the centroaxial skeletal tumors do receive radiation therapy. And again, the same thing, obviously, because you're treating larger volume tumors, you would have poor outcomes. The problem is these tumors. You have large tumors, and then you have non-resectable tumors. And these are the ones which come for radiation. This is how we contour, and that's why imaging is so important. And we have the technology now to spare bladder, rectum, and other structures and escalate doses to high levels. And these are our preliminary results. I have the latest results, but these were some time back. We have local controls of almost 60 and comparable to what we achieve with surgery. Chest wall PNETs, they generally present with large tumors, very, very large tumors, and the radiation volumes are huge. They're huge, and that leads to toxicity. But now we have technology by which you can actually reduce the dose to these critical structures and thereby improve outcome. Do we need radiation therapy if the tumor is resected out completely in chest wall Ewings? There is data from the ICAST 92 in the German group, which says that yes, probably. There are a lot of patients who actually still recur after surgery. But the Euro-Ewing says that if you have a negative margin, there is no improvement with addition of RT. But if you look at the indications of RT in this group, they were patients with large tumor, positive margin, large soft tissue component, and poor response to chemotherapy. So all the bad things were taken care of by radiation, and then at the end of it, the Euro-Ewing guys tell that there is no benefit if you had a negative margin. So what did we find? We found, this was a large series again, and we treated with a standard radiation therapy techniques. And if you look at the outcomes, if you do surgery, chemo, and radiation, the green area, the central one, the local control is 89%. But what we failed in is systemically. The event-free survival was just 50%. So they failed distally. So we need to augment chemotherapy. But if you're adding these three in terms of local control, you benefit. We've started using helical tomotherapy, or very fancy treatment, and that's because you treat large volumes, large areas, and our local controls in our series with this new advanced technology is 74%, which is very good in terms of for that area. Do we need to treat hemithorax radiation in patients with pleural effusion? The Germans showed that there is benefit in terms of local control and in terms of overall survival, and even in patients with metastasis. The last few slides to cover with brachy, and we need to talk to our surgeons even before you start planning. This is a botryoid rhabdomyosarcoma. We knew that we would have to give radiation therapy. It's always important to discuss pre-treatment, and so that you can put the ovaries away outside the radiation field, as you can see there, and you treat and you spare the ovaries. So ovarian function is spared. The last part, I got 4 minutes. I'll finish off with brachytherapy, which would cover. So brachy is the way by which you can actually deliver high dose to a small area and spare the surrounding structures. This is a kid with an extremity soft tissue sarcoma. It's standard used, very useful. It's close to the tibia and fibula. You can see those tumor excised and the tubes going close to the tibia and fibula. You can see the gel foam pushing the skin away. Those tubes are in place, and this is what the kid looks like on treatment and on the day when we remove the tube. And this is what she looks when she's grown up, and this is what the local site looks like. That little bump is not because of the radiation, it is because of Dr. Sajid Qureshi. But you need to have supportive surgeons to do things like this. This is a young kid, rhabdomyosarcoma alveolar of the orbit. We would have to give chemo and radiation. We know that. You can imagine what will happen to this kid if you do radiation therapy to the orbit. We devised our own way. We did brachytherapy for this. I removed one slide because of time. This is how we do. This is a freehand thing. We put in these needles into the orbit. This is not under guidance. You can see after the time we removed, and this is what the kid looks like, no side effects. And this technique is published and for you to see and use. It's very useful. This kid unfortunately died of metastatic disease, and they didn't die. They had a relapse and had metastatic disease, currently being treated at Stanford, but locally disease was controlled. Extremity, when we use external RT, you can have deformities like these, and this is what we innovated now. For this kid, would obviously require radiation therapy post-operatively because of the large soft tissue, and we did brachytherapy. After the tumor was excised, we inserted our needles, and this is what the kid looks like, and good grip, no deformities in the long run. So this is just to highlight that you can reduce toxicity with brachytherapy. This is what I talked to you about in the morning, about brachytherapy in the bladder and prostate area. They have a very good experience, and the toxicities are very little. If you look at the results, the overall survival is 92%, and local failure is 4%, and very few toxicities. We do also do the same thing in TMH. This is a bladder rhabdo. You can see that the dose is very well confined to the bladder neck. This was an alveolar rhabdomyosarcoma of the chest wall, and then Sajid had to remove the entire mass with the flap, and we had a free flap put in here. And you can see there's a small little vessel. I don't know whether the video is moving, but we could do it with a flap with excellent outcomes. And this is the flap, what it looks like. And we can actually change the area, change the dose to various areas that we are radiating. With flaps, you can do brachytherapy, but now we have moved on further. I know that it is very difficult to do flaps in all sites. It is easier to do skin flaps. So we've started doing brachytherapy with our skin flaps also. If somebody is interested, you can have a look at the outcomes, at the indications, the contraindications, how you have to do, where you have to do, everything written in this paper that we published recently. So to end, we have a whole lot of things that we can do, right? We've moved from cobalt to CyberKnife to tomotherapy to IGRT to proton beam therapy, but it costs a lot of money, and the increment is maybe towards the end very little, but it does benefit children who are chosen well, and if you use your various modalities well, if you combine with your other chemotherapy and surgery well, they lead to excellent outcomes. And finally, it's all about teamwork. I'd like to thank my colleagues from the bone and soft tissue and the pediatric solid tumor group and the medical physics for helping me out in the radiation therapy for our children. Thank you very much.